October 16th, 2023, 7:30 in the morning, San Diego, California. I stood in my kitchen and watched my wife pour poison into my coffee. Then she turned around, smiled at me, and said, "Here you go, Han." I took the cup from her hands, felt the warmth through the ceramic, smelled the familiar aroma of dark roast, and thought, if I drink this, I'm dead within 45 minutes. My name is Thomas Chun. I'm a retired defense attorney. I've been married 32 years. I have 3 adult children. The night before, at 2:13 in the morning, I'd woken up to hear my wife whispering on the phone with her lover, planning my murder for $3 million in life insurance. She thought I was asleep. She was wrong. I had recorded every word. 47 minutes of audio evidence. A complete murder conspiracy documented in her own voice. Now, standing in that kitchen, holding that poisoned coffee, I faced a choice. Confront her and risk tipping her off, or play along and gather more evidence. I chose evidence, because I understand something most people don't. In court, feelings don't matter. Facts do. I lifted the cup to my lips, pretended to drink, set it down, and told her I had a meeting. Then I drove to the police station. By noon, forensics had confirmed it. Oleander extract, enough to kill 3 men. By 3 in the afternoon, when my wife met her lover at Starbucks to celebrate my death, police surrounded them. The look on her face when she realized I was still alive, I'll never forget it. She's in prison now. 25 years. I'm alive, and the recording that saved my life is now evidence in a case study that every criminal attorney in California knows about. Let me tell you how it happened. 18 hours earlier, 2:13 in the morning on October 15th. My home sits in a quiet suburb called Rancho Penasquitos. 3-bedroom ranch style. Well-maintained lawn. 2 cars in the driveway. From the outside, Elena and I look like any other upper-middle-class American couple approaching retirement. I'm 58. Retired 3 years earlier after 25 years as a criminal defense attorney. Elena is 55. Former real estate agent. We have 3 adult children, Michael, 30, Sarah, 28, Daniel, 25, all living out of state now. We got married in 1991, 32 years. By all accounts, a stable marriage. Not particularly passionate. I would later describe it as comfortable, but stable. No recent fights. No major conflicts. Elena had been somewhat distant in recent months, but I attributed this to menopause, to our children moving away, to the natural evolution of a long marriage. I was wrong. That night, I went to bed around 11. Standard routine. Read for about 20 minutes. Elena was already asleep, or so I thought. I fell asleep around 11:30. At 2:13 in the morning, something woke me. Not a loud noise, not an alarm, just a voice. Elena's voice, coming from our master bathroom. The bathroom door was open about 4 inches. Just enough for sound to carry. I, half asleep, assumed she was on the phone with a friend. Maybe someone on the East Coast. It would be 5 in the morning there. But then I heard something that jolted me fully awake. Is the poison ready? I went still. Not scared. Not yet. Just confused. Poison? What poison? Was this a joke? A prank call? I stayed perfectly still. Eyes closed. Breathing steady. And then Elena continued talking. Tomorrow morning, in his coffee. He drinks it black, so he won't taste anything. You said 1 vial, right? In the whole cup? And that's when Thomas Chun, the husband, disappeared. Thomas Chun, the criminal defense attorney, took over, because in that moment, I understood 3 things. 1, my wife was planning to kill me. 2, she was working with someone else. 3, I needed evidence. Without evidence, it would be my word against hers. A bizarre accusation. A paranoid fantasy. I could confront her. She could deny everything. And I'd look like a crazy old man. Or worse, I could tip her off and she'd find another way to kill me. A way I wouldn't see coming. So I did something that probably saved my life. I moved my hand, slowly, carefully, toward my nightstand, found my iPhone, open the voice memo app, and hit record. For the next 47 minutes, I recorded every word my wife said. I've listened to that recording countless times since. The police allowed me to review it as part of my legal analysis. And let me tell you something. It's chilling, not because of rage or passion, but because of how calm Elena sounds. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a business transaction. Let me break down what I heard that night. Between 2:13 and 2:20 in the morning, Elena was talking to a man, later identified as Rick Palmer, her personal trainer. 42 years old, divorced, and here's what the police later discovered about Rick. He was drowning in debt. $30,000 on credit cards. A failed business venture, a gym franchise that went under during COVID. His ex-wife was suing him for back child support. And to make matters worse, he'd been gambling, online poker, losing another $10,000 over 6 months. When Elena approached him with this plan, Rick wasn't just motivated by love or lust. He was desperate, cornered, and desperate people do desperate things. Elena said, "So tomorrow morning, I'll make his coffee like usual." He gets up at 7:30, drinks his coffee while reading the news. I'll put the vial in the cup while it's brewing. He'll drink it within 10 minutes. Rick asked, "And then what? How long until it works?" Elena responded, "You said 30 to 40 minutes, right? His heart rate will spike, then crash. The doctor said he has high blood pressure already. It'll look like a heart attack." The conversation continued. Rick asked, "And you're sure about the insurance?" $3 million. Elena confirmed, "Yes, I increased it 6 months ago from $1 million to $3 million. Thomas signed the papers without even reading them. He trusts me." Let that sink in for a moment. 6 months earlier, Elena had tripled our life insurance policy. I, busy with my retirement hobbies, maybe a little complacent after 32 years of marriage, had signed without questioning it. Why would I question it? She was my wife. Elena continued, "The beneficiary is still just me. The kids get nothing unless I die too. So when this is done, I get $3 million. Tax-free. We split it 50-50 like we agreed." Rick said, $1.5 million each. Elena, do you know what that means for me? I can finally breathe, pay off everything, start over. Elena replied, "And then Costa Rica?" Rick confirmed, "Costa Rica. We'll get a place on the beach. No more freezing winters. No more stress." Now, I need to stop here and point something out. Elena clearly did some research. Costa Rica does have an extradition treaty with the United States as of 1998, but it's notoriously difficult to enforce, and many Americans who fled there for financial crimes have managed to avoid prosecution for years. So she wasn't stupid. She'd thought this through. What happened next in the recording gets really detailed. Elena said, "So walk me through it one more time. I want to make sure I do this right." Rick explained, "Okay. The oleander extract is in a small brown vial, 10 milliliters. Looks like maple syrup. You pour the whole vial into his coffee. Stir it. It dissolves completely in hot liquid." Elena asked, "And you won't taste it?" Rick assured her, "No. Oleander has a bitter taste, but coffee is already bitter, especially the way he drinks it. Black, no sugar. He won't notice." Now, for those unfamiliar with oleander, and I had to research this myself years ago in a case, it's a common ornamental shrub. Beautiful pink or white flowers. Grows all over California. Every part of the plant is toxic. Contains cardiac glycosides, compounds that disrupt the electrical signals in your heart. Symptoms start with nausea, vomiting, irregular heartbeat, then cardiac arrest. And here's the key detail. Oleander poisoning mimics a heart attack almost perfectly, unless the coroner specifically tests for it, which is rare. It goes undetected. Elena asked, "And you're sure the medical examiner won't find it?" Rick replied, "I researched this for 3 months. They don't routinely test for plant toxins unless there's a reason to suspect poisoning. And why would they? He's 58, overweight, high blood pressure, history of stress from his legal career. When a guy like that drops dead, They call it natural causes. 58. Overweight, high blood pressure. I heard my wife describe me like a medical chart, not a person, not her husband of 32 years, a target. And here's the disturbing part about how Rick obtained this poison. Police later traced the oleander extract back to a company called Botany Source Solutions in Tampa, Florida. They specialize in selling concentrated plant compounds, supposedly for academic research. The company's website has a disclaimer, not for human consumption, but there's no verification process. Anyone can order. Rick ordered it under a fake name, paid with a prepaid debit card, and had it shipped to a P.O. box. The entire transaction took less than a week. The irony? If Rick had searched for how to buy poison online, he'd probably been flagged. But because he searched for oleander extract research purposes, he was able to purchase a lethal substance with the same ease as ordering a book on Amazon. The company is still operating, by the way, completely legal. That's how easy it is. The conversation continued with Elena laying out the timeline. So, timeline. Tomorrow morning. Actually, it's already tomorrow. So this morning, 7:30, I make the coffee. He drinks it. By 8:15, he's dead. I call 911, hysterical. They pronounce him dead at the scene or on the way to the hospital. Maybe they do an autopsy, maybe they don't. But either way, they won't find anything suspicious. Rick asked, and then Elena said, funeral within a week. I play the grieving widow. Our kids fly in, but they leave after a few days. They have their own lives. Insurance payout usually takes 4 to 6 weeks. By mid-November, I have $3 million in my account. Rick confirmed. And then you fly to San Jose. I meet you there. We start our new life. Elena concluded. Exactly. Thomas always wanted to travel when he retired, but he was too cheap, too cautious. Well, now I get to travel. With you, with his money. I want you to understand something. This wasn't a desperate woman. This wasn't someone backed into a corner. Someone afraid for her life. This was a woman who had spent 8 months, planning to murder her husband because she was bored, because she wanted a different life, a more exciting life, and she was willing to kill to get it. The recording ends at 3 in the morning. Elena finally hung up with Rick, flushed the toilet, for cover, presumably, and came back to bed. Phone still clutched in my hand under the blanket, pretended to be asleep. That was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Lying there, perfectly still, while the woman who just planned my murder climbed back into bed beside me. I could hear her breathing, feel the mattress shift as she settled in. And then, and this detail still haunts me, she reached over and put her hand on my shoulder. Just a gentle touch. The kind of unconscious affection that comes from 3 decades of sleeping beside someone. I lay there for the next 4 hours. Until dawn. I didn't sleep. Couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. I kept asking myself the same questions. How long had she been planning this? When did she stop loving me? Did she ever love me? But then, and this is what separated me from most people in my situation, I forced myself to think like a lawyer again. First question, is a recording admissible in court? California is a 2-party consent state for recordings, meaning, technically, recording someone without their knowledge is illegal. But, and this is crucial, there's an exception. If you're recording a conversation where a crime is being discussed, particularly a crime that threatens your own life, that recording becomes admissible as evidence of imminent danger. I knew this. I'd used this precedent in a case back in 2015. So legally I was covered. Second question, should I confront Elena? My instinct, the human instinct, was to wake her up, scream at her, demand to know why. But the lawyer in me knew that was a mistake. If I confronted her now, she'd deny everything. Claim it was a joke, a misunderstanding. And without witnesses, without corroboration, my recording might not be enough. Worse, if she realized I knew, she might accelerate the plan, try something different, something I couldn't predict. The safest move, the only move, was to play along. Third question, who was Rick Palmer? I didn't know the name. Didn't know my wife had a personal trainer. Actually, that's not quite true. Elena had mentioned joining a gym about 18 months ago. Said she wanted to get in shape, maybe lose some weight before our oldest daughter's wedding. I had been supportive, paid for the membership, never asked questions. Why would I? After 32 years, you trust your spouse. Now I realized she'd been planning this since the beginning. Or at least, she'd met Rick 18 months ago. And somewhere in that time, an affair had turned into a murder conspiracy. Fourth question, what about the kids? This was the thought that broke me. Elena and I had 3 children. Michael, 30, Sarah, 28, Daniel, 25. Michael was a software engineer in Seattle. Sarah, a nurse in Portland. Daniel, finishing his MBA in Boston. If Elena's plan worked, if I died this morning, what would they think? They'd think their father had a heart attack. They'd mourn me. They'd comfort their mother. They'd never know she'd killed me. And that was when I made my decision. I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to make sure Elena faced consequences. Not revenge. Not violence. Justice. At 7 in the morning, Elena woke up. I, still in bed, pretended to stir awake. Yawned. Stretched. Morning, she said. Smiled at me. That same smile she'd worn for 32 years. Morning. I replied, and the day that would change everything began. Now, let me pause here for a moment. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. What would you have done? If you'd overheard your spouse planning to poison you, would you have confronted them? Called the police immediately? Or would you have done what I did? Played along to gather more evidence? Think about it. Because the choice I made in that moment determined whether I lived or died. 7:30 in the morning, October 16th, 2023. I walked into the kitchen. Elena was already there, wearing her bathrobe, starting the coffee maker. Want some breakfast? She asked. I can make eggs. I looked at her, really looked at her. 5'6", salt and pepper hair, laugh lines around her eyes. The same woman I'd woken up next to for 11,680 days. And in about 10 minutes, she was going to try to kill me. Just, coffee is fine, I said. I'm not that hungry. Elena nodded, turned back to the counter, and I watched. I watched her take my usual mug, a navy blue ceramic mug with World's Best Dad printed on it, a Father's Day gift from Sarah back in 2015. I watched her pour the coffee. Black, no sugar, just the way I liked it. And I described this moment in excruciating detail later. I watched her reach into her bathrobe pocket, pull out a small brown vial, uncap it, pour the entire contents into my coffee, stir it with a spoon, then rinse the spoon, put the empty vial back in her pocket. The whole process took maybe 15 seconds. Practice, smooth, like she'd rehearsed it. Elena turned around, holding the mug, and smiled at me. Here you go, hon. I took the mug from her hands, felt the warmth through the ceramic, smelled the familiar coffee aroma, and thought, this is it. If I drink this, I'm dead. But if I don't drink this, if I refuse it, if I confront her, she'll know I know. And then what? She could claim she changed her mind, didn't actually do it. Or worse, she could try again later, in a way I won't expect. So I did something extraordinary. I lifted the mug to my lips, tilted it, let the coffee touch my lips, then lowered it. You know what? I said, I just remembered I have an 8:30 meeting with Jim about the retirement portfolio. I should probably head out early, grab coffee on the way. Elena's face, and I swear this is true, showed a flicker of disappointment, just a micro expression, gone in half a second. Oh, she said. Okay, you sure? The coffee's already made. I forced a smile. Yeah, I know. Sorry. I'll drink it when I get back. I set the mug down on the counter, went back to the bedroom, got dressed, grabbed my wallet and keys, walked past Elena, who was now sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. See you later, I said. Love you, she replied. Automatically, I walked out the door, got in my car. drove to the end of the block, pulled over, and for the first time in 18 hours, I let myself feel it. The fear, the betrayal, the rage. I sat there, hand shaking, and cried. Not for long. Maybe 2 minutes. Then I wiped my face, started the car again, and drove to the San Diego Police Department. At 8:45 in the morning, I walked into the main precinct on Broadway, asked to speak to a detective, was directed to Detective Saren Gwynn, a 15-year veteran of the Major Crimes Unit. I sat down in an interview room, pulled out my phone, and said, "I need to report an attempted murder. My wife tried to poison me this morning, and I have proof." Detective Gwynn told me later her first thought was, "This guy sounds lucid, educated, credible." Her second thought was, "This is going to be complicated." She pressed record on the department's audio system, and I played the recording, all 47 minutes of it. When it finished, Detective Gwynn sat back in her chair. "Mr. Chun," she said, "you're telling me this happened last night? And this morning she actually put the poison in your coffee." I nodded. The coffee is still sitting on my kitchen counter. I didn't drink it. I told her I had a meeting and left. Gwynn asked, "And you have the coffee? You didn't dispose of it?" I replied, "No. I wanted to leave everything exactly as it was. Evidence. If I had dumped the coffee or washed the mug, the entire case would rest solely on audio recording, which, while powerful, is harder to prosecute. But with the physical evidence, the actual poison coffee, we had a case that was nearly airtight." Gwynn said, "Okay, I need to bring in the DA's office and get a warrant. Do not go home. Do not contact your wife. Stay here." I stayed. For the next 3 hours, I sat in that interview room while Detective Gwynn coordinated with the district attorney, applied for a search warrant, and mobilized a forensic team. At noon, they got the warrant. I've seen cases where warrants get thrown out, but this, airtight, no judge would refuse. At 12:30, a forensics team entered my house. Elena was still home, watching television. They confiscated the coffee mug, the coffee maker, the bathrobe she'd been wearing that morning, found the empty brown vial in her pocket. By 2 in the afternoon, the lab results came back. The coffee, positive for oleander glycosides. Specifically, oleandrin and nerine. Concentration, approximately 600 micrograms per milliliter. For context, a lethal dose is about 100 micrograms per kilogram of body weight. I weighed about 85 kilograms. That means a lethal dose for me would be 8,500 micrograms. The coffee contained over 20,000 micrograms, enough to kill me twice over. At 3 in the afternoon, Detective Gwynn received another call from an officer monitoring Elena's phone and computer, which they'd seized under the warrant. Elena had sent a text message to Rick Palmer at 2:30. The message read, "He didn't drink it. He left this morning and hasn't come home. Something's wrong. We need to talk." Rick's reply, "Meet me at the Starbucks on Mira Mesa in 30 minutes. Gwynn looked at me. "Do you want to watch?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes, I want to watch." What happened next unfolded faster than Elena could have imagined. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Starbucks on Mira Mesa Boulevard. Busy afternoon. Students with laptops. Business people grabbing afternoon caffeine. The usual noise of a suburban coffee shop. Elena Chin walked in at 3:05. She was wearing jeans and a light sweater. Sunglasses. Hair pulled back in a ponytail. To anyone watching, she looked like a typical middle-aged woman meeting a friend for coffee. Rick Palmer was already there, sitting at a corner table. Tall, muscular, gym clothes, baseball cap. Elena sat down across from him. And outside, in 3 unmarked vehicles, 6 police officers watched, including Detective Nguyen. And me. I was sitting in the back of Nguyen's car, about 50 feet from the Starbucks entrance. I could see Elena through the window, see her talking to Rick, gesturing, looking worried. Inside the shop, Elena and Rick were having a conversation that another surveillance team, this one inside, posing as customers, was recording. Elena said, "He knows. He has to know. Why else wouldn't he drink the coffee? Rick replied, maybe he really did have a meeting. Maybe he forgot. Elena insisted, no, I've been married to him for 32 years. I know when he's lying. Rick asked, so what do we do? Elena said, I don't know. Maybe we wait a few days. Maybe we try again. Rick suggested, or maybe we just leave, forget the whole thing, go to Costa Rica anyway, start over. Elena countered, with what money? We need that $3 million. Rick started to say, Elena, if he knows. And that's when the doors opened. 6 officers, tactical gear, weapons drawn, police, hands where we can see them. The shop went silent. Customers froze. Baristas ducked behind the counter. Elena looked up, saw the officers, and in that moment, she said, I heard it clearly through surveillance feed. Wait, what? No. This is a mistake. Her voice was shaking. Not angry, not defiant, just disbelief. Rick tried to stand. An officer pushed him back down. Sir, stay seated. Elena's face went through 3 distinct expressions in about 2 seconds. First, confusion. What's happening? Second, realization. They know. Third, fear. Oh, God. Elena Chun, you are under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent. Rick Palmer didn't resist. Another officer cuffed him. Rick Palmer, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. They handcuffed both of them, led them out of the Starbucks. And as Elena was being walked past the storefront window, she looked to her right and saw me sitting in the police car, watching her. I'll never forget the look on her face. Not anger, not rage, just shock. The shock of realizing she'd been outplayed. Elena mouthed something. I couldn't quite make it out, but I think it was, how? I didn't respond, just watched as they loaded her into a police van and drove away. Before we continue, let me ask you to do something. If this story has affected you, if you're thinking about trust, about evidence, about the person sleeping next to you tonight, leave a comment below. Tell me, do you think I did the right thing? Or should I have confronted her immediately? I read every comment, and I want to know what you think. At the police station, Elena and Rick were processed separately. Both were read their Miranda rights. Both asked for lawyers. Rick cracked first. Within 24 hours, his attorney, a public defender, advised him to cooperate. Rick gave a full statement, confirmed the affair, confirmed the murder plot, confirmed that he'd obtained the oleander extract from Botanisaur Solutions, ordered under a fake name with a prepaid debit card. In exchange for his cooperation, the DA offered him a plea deal, 20 years, with the possibility of parole after 15. Rick took it. Elena, on the other hand, didn't cooperate. Her lawyer, a high-priced defense attorney from Los Angeles, argued that the audio recording was inadmissible, that I had violated California's 2-party consent law, that Elena's statements were taken out of context, that the oleander in the coffee could have been placed there by me. To frame Elena, the DA's office wasn't impressed. The case went to trial 4 months later. February 2024. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution presented the audio recording, the poisoned coffee, the empty vial, Rick Palmer's testimony, Elena's text messages, and financial records showing the insurance increase. The defense presented character witnesses who said Elena was a loving wife, a psychologist who claimed Elena was suffering from menopause-related mood swings, and an argument that the conversation was hypothetical and not a real plan. The jury deliberated for 1 hour and 43 minutes. I've seen juries take weeks in my 30 years of practice. This, 1 hour. That's how strong the evidence was. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder in the first degree. Conspiracy to commit murder. Fraud. On March 12, 2024, Elena Chin was sentenced to 25 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 20 years. She's currently serving her sentence at the California Institution for Women in Corona. She'll be 80 years old before she's eligible for parole. The hardest part wasn't the trial. It was what came after. 6 months after the trial, I found myself sitting in a coffee shop in San Diego, different one from where Elena was arrested. I couldn't go back there. I looked older, not just physically, but something in my eyes. A weight. People kept asking me, "How are you doing?" I thought about it for a long time before answering. "I'm alive," I would say. That's what matters, right? But it wasn't that simple. The hardest part wasn't the fear, wasn't even the betrayal. It was the questions. When did she stop loving me? Was it years ago? Did she ever love me at all? Were 32 years of my life a lie? I didn't have answers. My children took it hard. Michael, the oldest, the software engineer in Seattle, called me the day after the arrest. "Dad," he said, his voice shaking, "I don't understand. Mom tried to kill you? Our mom? The woman who made us pancakes every Sunday? Who drove us to soccer practice?" I didn't have an answer. What do you say to your son when his entire childhood suddenly feels like a lie? Michael cut off all contact with his mother that day. He's never spoken to her since. Sarah, the nurse in Portland, took it differently. She visited her mother once in prison. Once, she came back and told me. Mom looked at me and said, "I was going to use the money to give you kids a better future." A better future? By killing Dad? Sarah went through 6 months of intensive therapy after that. She told her therapist she has nightmares where she's drinking coffee and she can't stop herself. Daniel, the youngest, tried to maintain a relationship with Elena for a few months. But eventually, he stopped visiting too. She wrote me a letter last month, through her lawyer, asked if I consider speaking to the parole board on her behalf when the time comes. I didn't respond. What is there to say? I have since moved out of the house in Rancho Penasquitos. Too many memories. I'm living in a condo downtown now. Started going to a support group for people who survived domestic violence. I never thought of it that way. Domestic violence. But that's what it was, right? She was going to kill me. Yes, that's exactly what it was. The DA's office estimates that if I had drunk that coffee, I would have died within 45 minutes. Probably would have collapsed in my driveway on my way to that fake meeting. Elena would have called 911, cried, played the devastated widow, and no one would have suspected a thing. Except I woke up at exactly the right moment, heard exactly the right conversation, and had the presence of mind to record it. When people ask me what I want them to learn from my story, I say this: trust your instincts, but also trust evidence. I could have confronted her that night, screamed at her, accused her, but without proof, it would have been my word against hers. And maybe she would have tried again, and I wouldn't have been ready. The recording saved my life, not just because it convicted her, but because it protected me. And the other thing is that you never really know anyone. Not completely. I thought I knew Elena better than anyone. 32 years. And I was completely wrong. That's the hardest truth to accept, isn't it? That the person you share a bed with, share a life with, could be capable of something like this. But it happens more often than you'd think. According to the FBI, approximately 5% of all homicides in the United States are committed by spouses. About 400 cases per year. And those are just the ones we know about. How many heart attacks, how many sudden deaths, how many tragic accidents are actually murders? We'll never know. I was lucky. Or maybe I wasn't lucky. Maybe I was smart, prepared, trained by decades of legal work to think strategically. But not everyone has that advantage. So what can you do to protect yourself? First, pay attention to changes in behavior. Elena had been distant for months. I dismissed it as menopause. But in hindsight, it was withdrawal. She was emotionally detaching from me because she'd already made the decision to kill me. Second, be aware of financial changes. Elena increased the life insurance policy 6 months before the murder attempt. That's not a coincidence. If your spouse suddenly changes your insurance, your will, your beneficiaries, ask questions. Third, trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And fourth, document everything. My recording was the difference between life and death, between a successful prosecution and a case that might have never been proven. Now here's a question for anyone reading this. If you were in my position, would you have done the same? Or would you have confronted her immediately? In the end, Elena Chen's mistake wasn't the murder plot itself. It was underestimating her husband. She thought I was asleep. She thought I was complacent, passive, trusting. She forgot that I wasn't just a husband. I was a lawyer, and in my 30 years of practice, I learned one fundamental truth. Evidence wins cases. This story keeps me up at night, not because of the crime itself. I've seen worse in my years of legal practice, but because of what it represents. It represents the ultimate betrayal. The person you're supposed to be able to trust more than anyone in the world, trying to kill you. For money, not even a lot of money. In the grand scheme of things, $1.5 million each. After they split it, enough to live comfortably for a few years in Costa Rica. But not enough to justify taking a life. Nothing is. The ancient Greeks had a word, philoxenia, love of strangers, hospitality, and its opposite, misoxenia, hatred of strangers. But there's a third word less commonly used, oikoxenia. Oikos, home. Xenia, hospitality. Oikoxenia, the betrayal that comes from within your own house, not from a stranger on the street, but from the person who lives under your roof, who sits at your table, who sleeps in your bed. That's what this was. Oikoxenia. The enemy wasn't a stranger breaking into my house at night. It was the woman who'd lived there for 32 years. It was the morning coffee, the comfortable routine, the trust built over 3 decades, all weaponized. But here's what I want you to remember. I survived, not through luck, not through violence, but through intelligence, patience, and an understanding of how evidence works. I turned the tables not by becoming like my would-be killers, but by being smarter than them, by using the law, by trusting the system. And in the end, justice was served. Elena Chun and Rick Palmer are in prison. I'm alive, rebuilding my life, and sharing my story so that others might recognize the warning signs. Because the truth is, we live in a world where the person closest to you could be your greatest threat, where 32 years of marriage can end in a cup of poisoned coffee. But we also live in a world where evidence matters, where the law can protect you, where thinking clearly in the face of terror can save your life. 2 years have passed since that October morning. It's 2025 now. I'm living in a 2-bedroom condo in downtown San Diego. The space is minimalist. Clean lines, neutral colors, very few personal effects. No wedding photos. No family portraits. I kept one picture. It's in a small frame on my bookshelf from my daughter Sarah's wedding in 2019. All 5 of us, me, Elena, and the 3 kids. We looked happy. We were happy, I think. Or at least I was. I pause sometimes, studying that photo. That's the thing that haunts me most. Not what she did, but what she destroyed. Not just our marriage, but the memories too. I look at that photo now and I wonder, was any of it real? My daily routine now is simple. I wake up around 6, go for a run along the bay, come back, shower, make breakfast. And yes, I make my own coffee. Every single day. I check the beans, check the water, check everything. People ask me if I think about dating again. My kids ask me that. My therapist asks me that. And honestly, I don't know. How do you trust someone again after this? How do you let someone make you breakfast without wondering if they're trying to kill you? But I'm not angry. Not anymore. For the first year, I was furious. Not just at Elena and Rick, but at myself. How did I not see it? How did I miss all the signs? I'm a lawyer, for God's sake. I'm trained to spot deception. But then I realized something. I didn't miss the signs. There were no signs, or at least none that would have made me suspect murder. An affair? Maybe. Some distance in the marriage? Sure. But murder? That requires a leap of logic that most people don't make. Because most people aren't murderers. I stand at my window sometimes, overlooking the city, thinking about all of this. The thing is, I could spend the rest of my life being paranoid, suspicious of everyone, never trusting anyone. And in a way, that would mean Elena won. She'd have destroyed not just our marriage, but my ability to ever have another relationship. So instead, I choose to live. I choose to believe that what happened to me is rare, that most people aren't capable of this. And I choose to share my story so that if someone else notices the signs, the distance, the financial changes, the unexplained behavior, they'll know to pay attention, to document, to protect themselves. My relationship with my children is getting better. Michael still won't talk about his mother. Sarah's been in therapy, working through it. Daniel actually visited Elena once, about a year ago. He came back and told me she still doesn't think she did anything wrong. She thinks you set her up. That didn't surprise me. Cognitive dissonance. She can't accept that she's a villain in this story, so she's rewritten it in her head. I'm the bad guy who framed her. She and Rick were just in love. The evidence was planted. She still writes to me every few months. Her lawyer sends letters. I don't read them anymore. I had my attorney send a cease and desist. She's entitled to write me, but I'm not obligated to read it. Sometimes people ask me, if you would go back to October 15th, 2023, knowing everything you know now, what would you do differently? Nothing. I handled it the only way I could have handled it. If I confronted her, if I'd acted on emotion instead of evidence, I might be dead, or she might have gotten away with it. The recording saved my life. The discipline saved my life. The lawyer in me saved my life. I spent 30 years defending people accused of crimes. Some guilty, some innocent. And I always told them the same thing. Evidence is everything. The truth only matters if you can prove it. That morning, I became my own attorney, my own investigator, my own witness. And I proved the truth. That's why I'm alive. That's why Elena's in prison. That's why justice was served. You know what the strangest part is? I don't hate her. I should, I know, but I don't. I pity her. She threw away 32 years of marriage, destroyed her relationship with her children, and will spend the next 2 decades in prison. All for money she never got. All for a life in Costa Rica that never happened. She gambled everything on a plan that failed. And the only reason it failed was because I woke up at the right time, heard the right conversation, and made the right choices. In law, we talk about but for causation. But for X happening, why would not have occurred? But for me, waking up at 2:13 in the morning, I'd be dead. But for Elena making that phone call, I'd never have known. But for my 30 years of legal training, I might not have thought to record it. Life is a series of contingencies, small moments that lead to big consequences. And that morning, every contingency fell in my favor. I still live with the weight of that morning. I see a therapist twice a month. I attend a support group for survivors of domestic violence, something I never thought I'd need to call myself a survivor. I never thought of it that way. Domestic violence. But that's what it was, right? She was going to kill me. Yes, that's exactly what it was. The DA's office told me that if I had drunk that coffee, I would have died within 45 minutes. I probably would have collapsed in my driveway on my way to that fake meeting I'd invented. Elena would call 911, cried, played the devastated widow, and no one would have suspected a thing. Except I woke up at exactly the right moment, heard exactly the right conversation, and had the presence of mind to record it. So before I finish, I want to leave you with this. If you found this story valuable, if it made you think about trust, about evidence, about the importance of paying attention, please share it. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. Someone who's noticed changes in their spouse's behavior. Someone who's dismissed their instincts because they didn't want to seem paranoid. Because the truth is, most people aren't Elena. Most people aren't planning to poison their spouses. But some are. And if this story saves even one life, if one person hears and thinks, wait, those are the same signs I've been seeing, and starts documenting, starts protecting themselves, then sharing my nightmare will have been worth it. Elena Chin is currently serving a 25-year sentence at California Institution for Women in Corona, California. She will be eligible for parole in 2044 at age 75. Rick Palmer is serving a 20-year sentence at California State Prison, Los Angeles County. He will be eligible for parole in 2038 at age 57. I continue to advocate for awareness about financial motive domestic violence and speak regularly to law enforcement groups about evidence preservation in domestic threat situations. The coffee mug, the navy blue one with "World's Best Dad" printed on it, remains in evidence storage at the San Diego Police Department. I was offered its return after the trial concluded. I declined. When asked why, I simply said, "Some things are better left as evidence." I'm Thomas Chun. I'm 60 years old. I'm a retired attorney, a father of 3, and a survivor of attempted murder. I'm alive today because I woke up at 2:13 in the morning on October 15th, 2023. Because I listened, because I recorded, because I understood that in the end, evidence is the only thing that matters. Every morning, I make my own coffee. I check the beans. I check the water. I check everything. And every morning, I'm grateful to be alive to do it. That's my story. The $3 million breakfast that never was.